everybody. This is Max Prime with Max Prime Reviews, and I have a special guest on my show today, creator, writer of Kaiju Max, and that is Zander Cannon. Hello, Xander. How are you?
Hi. Good. How are you?
Doing awesome today. My very first interview question for you was for some of my fans who watch my show who don't know what Kaiju Max is all about. So, what is Kaiju Max comic book all about?
Well, let's see. Well, here's the latest issue. That it's basically a prison for giant monsters is the high concept. But instead of being a sort of a straight science fiction story, it's more of it's told like HBO's Oz. So it's a little bit dark. It's a little bit gritty, and there are monster gangs and monster drugs and monster violence and stabbings and. So it has this very sort of colorful aesthetic, but it's extremely dark and gruesome comic. That's kind of dark and funny and disgusting and sad at the same time. Yeah.
Awesome. How long have you been writing comics?
I've been writing comics for 23 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I started in '93.
Wow.
So was sort of a gold rush at the time because Image had just begun, I believe, and so like it was kind of the accepted wisdom that that like the next big hit was going to be someone kind of like young and cool, and so a lot of comic companies were giving a chance to like young people, and I was very young. I was 20 at the time, so
okay.
So yeah, I didn't turn out to be the next Jim Lee, but I'm really glad that somebody thought I might be.
That's awesome. I had a chance to actually read Kaiju Max, and I was going to ask what inspired, like, so I know you said Oz and everything, because I read about the monsters being in lockdown, and I thought that was awesome. So was that Oz that inspired Kaiju Max, or what other, like, things you think kind of, like, helped you create that idea?
The most immediate sort of influence was Ultraman. I had found a DVD set, and my son was like 2 or 3, and my son and my wife and I all kind of watched those together, and I mean they're utterly ridiculous and nonsensical. But you start thinking like, well, like you start trying to put tie things together like in your mind as a writer, and you're like, this world just doesn't make any sense. It's amazing. And so I wanted to do something that was about the monsters. What do they do on a monster island or whatever when they're all just hanging out together? And I thought, well, it's kind of half an idea, like. So I figured I needed to have a real genre to tie it around. And so I thought, well, a prison makes sense. And I'd always kind of thought prison dramas were interesting in that they were so limited, but like there's a lot that you can do with them. So I was watching Oz, and it's like, yeah, this actually fits surprisingly closely,
My next question is that once I read season 1, and I know that our main protagonist is Electrogore, and then I know like going into season 2, we have them Electrogore and Green Humongo like together. Are they going to be like the new team throughout? You say season 2? Are we going to like?
No, I mean they are for a little while, but but yeah, the what I wanted to do. Well, the tentative title for the second season, like the first one is called Terror and Respect,
okay.
But the second season, the tentative title is the Seamy Underbelly,
okay.
And it's basically more about what's life on the outside like for kaiju. What's sort of the crime underworld for kaiju as it sort of orbits around. So it's like, well, who are the ones that are out on parole, like his brother, like the Green Humongo's brother, and who are the ones who haven't been caught yet, or the people who sort of fell through the cracks of society, and the police, who are the police that sort of track them all down, and so that's so we're going to follow Electrogore throughout, but also Chisato, the policewoman who
yes.
is she's sort of a rookie, and what's her deal, and but yeah, it's the thing that I like about mashing up these two genres is that like with with these monsters, you kind of like accept or expect a certain number of things that happen, and I think that then when you mash that up with the prison dramas, then you can kind of turn it on its head and go like, oh, you thought it was going to go that way? Well, you're totally wrong, and something horrible is going to happen or whatever. There's always sort of like just a god awful thing it's around the corner that's going to happen to somebody.
Gotcha. My next question: how did it feel when Kaiju Max was nominated for the Eisner Award?
That's fantastic. I mean, fantastic. It's very gratifying. One, that because I think that this is it's a really strange comic, but I also think that it's sort of a sign of the times that comics, there's no real sort of conventional way to do comics anymore. There's no safe way to do comics, and so it's almost best to just say well, here's something pretty nuts. You're like, what do you think, world? It becomes, and I think that I try to make it mean something, and I try to make it sort of have a little bit of weight for readers. And I hope, it's nice to see that people are kind of seeing that, and that it's both a fun series to read, but it's also sort of hopefully sticks with you a little bit. And then that's what's important, not sticking to a genre, sticking to sort of what's been established over the years.
Understand. One of my next to last questions. For my fans, again, where do we get Kaiju Max? Is it at your local comic book stores, Amazon? Where can we find Kaiju Max?
Yeah, both of those. I mean, comic store, that's Amazon, obviously, that's great. And leave a review if you could. But I think that the helpful thing, comics like this really kind of live and die on when people put them on their pull lists, at the local comic book store. If you're going to go to the comic book store anyway, it's really helpful to us as sort of middle press reader or small press books. It's boy, if stores know that people want to get it, if 5 people put it on their pull list, they're like, oh, well, maybe instead of getting that plus 1, we'll get that plus 5 or that plus 10, and that really helps. I think that, and I really, because when I talked with Oni and they said, well, we're going to do this as a regular series, it's okay, I really want to make these issues work as individual issues. So I've got a lot of stuff in the letters page, essays, kaiju movie reviews, a bunch of jokes and stuff like that. So I, trying to make sure that it's this is really worth getting as an individual issue, because if people don't buy the individual issues, it's really rough to get to that, sort of tipping point for a trade paperback.
Understand. Well, I said my last question now would be season 2. Again, I know no spoilers and everything, but is it going to be, again, I know you mentioned suspenseful moments, things that we can't expect. So is that what we're looking forward to? Things that we not? Yeah,
there's always terrible stuff around the corner. Yeah, I mean, it's I wanted to sort of show what things are like, when you sort of are completely unwanted by society, and happen to be 30 stories tall.
Awesome. I want to thank you for giving me again the 10 minutes of your time, and
sure.
Please, how do we follow you? Actually, how do we follow Zander Cannon?
Well, you can friend me on Facebook, and I also am on Twitter at Zander_Cannon. There's also go to Kaijumax.com, and that redirects to my Tumblr, and that has sort of the latest things. I also do a commentary podcast for the comic, where I go through each issue and sort of talk about little bits of minutia that you might not have thought to ask or wonder about, references or gags or inspiration or whatever.
Okay. Well, thank you, Xander. Thank you for coming on the Max Prime show. This is Max Prime Reviews. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And we're out later.
All right.